So hello and welcome back to another Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Pascal Steve, and on the other end, it is Steve Hall. Steve, I don't know whether it's in the depth of the winter at your place or whether it's summertime and you're cutting due to the beanie on your head. What is it? Is it a mixture between those two?
I am just that much of a hipster.
I think they wear.
No.
I mean, if you are, then you need to actually kind of wrap it up a little bit more so that it's just sitting on your head, but not really keeping you warm.
The fisherman beanie, that's like that style, isn't it?
Yeah, I never got that one, to be honest. It's just like, what are you even doing there?
My issue is, actually, I recently learned about beanies, how apparently you're not meant to wear them pulled all the way down. That's not the fashionable way. You're meant to wear them like just a little bit above. So anyway.
Why is that? Do you have the rationale for it?
It's fashion. I have no idea. Like, I don't understand fashion particularly. Just people decide that looks good, you know.
Yeah. Did the fishermen do it as well like this? I have no idea, man.
I actually don't know where that comes from. But what was I going to say? I think someone's at the door, actually. I do have posts coming. Can I go grab that?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry,
go
one
ahead.
sec.
Oh dear. No worries.
Ada is basically our alarm.
I can see that.
Alarm? No, rather doorbell, because our doorbell's actually broken. Actually, I'm in the market where I'm soon going to buy a Ring doorbell. Everyone has a freaking Ring doorbell. But I don't know if you get this, Pascal, but now since we moved into a house, we get people trying to sell us stuff, door-to-door salesmen. And I know I shouldn't necessarily be annoyed at this, but sometimes it's annoying when you're in the middle of work. Like charities quite often come door-to-door. We must have had like 5 charities come to us this year already, all asking for money. And it's just like, man, it's a bit much. And then door-to-door salesmen I just like, go away. So I want a Ring doorbell so I can look on my phone and be like, who is it? Right, yeah, I can ignore you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I get that. So we don't really have that many door-to-door salesmen, if I now recall. I think we only had it like once or twice, and that was some kind of religion, where I was just like, oh no, sorry, that's not for me.
Yeah. What are they called again? I've forgotten.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah, I know. I've forgotten it.
But you probably,
I know the exact.
Yeah. Anyway, and I was considering that as well because my office is right now on the officially second floor, but it's kind of the third floor if you really think about it. And I can't really hear the doorbell ringing at times, especially when I'm listening to something. And I was considering it would be very, very cool because sometimes I need to rush downstairs because the postman doesn't really wait for that long up until I'm back down, right? And they are already gone then. And I thought like a Ring doorbell or something similar to that would be actually very, very neat, to be honest.
And I don't know if you've ever had this, but I've had it where I'm like just coming out of the shower or I'm on the toilet and I'm like, if you have a Ring doorbell and you have your phone in the bathroom, you can just say to them, leave it on the doorstep.
Yes.
Rather than taking it away and then it's...
Well, when you're away, right? Like...
Yeah.
That would be
perfect.
Neat as well. I mean, yeah. I think now that you're saying this, I've contemplated that for like 2 years or so.
Yeah.
And I think should actually get a little bit more concrete about it.
It's one of those things where I'm like, but I don't need it. Like, it's just like, it's money for the sake of something. I wish I'd bought it. I think I was looking at them in Black Friday, like like last year, and they were like half price. So I'm such an idiot. I wish I bought it then, which is also why I'm like, maybe I'll wait all the way to Black Friday again. They come on sale. But I'm like, I need one because our doorbell doesn't even work. Like, it's just broken. So it would be useful. But back to your question.
What was it again?
You won't be surprised by this answer. Why I'm wearing the beanie and the vest.
Yeah.
So I'm actually warm, but my hair is a mess and I need a haircut. So the hat is just a cover up.
I can see that. Honestly, so funny enough, the older I grow, the more often I wear some kind of hat because I can't be bothered making my hair anymore. Back then, it's crazy because we've talked about it in previous episodes already, what kind of shit you did when you were younger because you couldn't leave the house without looking, in your opinion, good. And I still remember the time, first 2 winters in Berlin, it was minus 25 degrees and I was outside with Chuck's Converse on, a leather jacket that I couldn't close, the zip, and I was freezing my balls off. But it was necessary to look that way. Absolutely ridiculous, right? And the same was going on with my hair. I always needed to make my hair back then. And now I can't even recall the last time that I did prepare my hair. It's just I'm getting it cut and then hopefully it works out on one day. And if not, I don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel, because especially hair, because I train basically almost every day, like 6 days out of the week. So if I do my hair in the morning, which I would do if I wasn't going to go train and then need to shower and screw it all up. So I'm just like, what's the point of actually doing it? Because I do like it once I've done my hair and I look presentable. I like feeling like I look decent. Like it's a nice feeling when you do that.
That's true.
I don't care enough to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of, you're in that ambivalent spot. I like it, but I don't like doing it.
I feel for women because, not to say they have to do this at all, but it's become like a societal norm. They wear makeup and they're presentable. And like for us, like me and Charlotte, to leave the house, she always wants to do something generally. Like, because this, she won't care that I've said this, I don't think, but it's a bit of a weird thing. I don't know if you have ever noticed this about Charlotte. She doesn't really have eyebrows. So she has to like paint on eyebrows or use makeup. So she never used to care. When I first was dating her, she never did anything with her eyebrows. She just had no eyebrows basically. But now she can't leave the house without eyebrows on. And it's just like, man.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. I mean, men have it in so many ways much, much easier, honestly. If men are complaining about things, I'm just like, dude, come on, get your shit together. Like, honestly. And I don't want to kind of put it into 2 different categories, because there are plenty of things where it's also there's an inequity as well, because often when it's discussed, especially now, and funny enough in the last episode, because one of those episodes, I don't know if it was the last one, I was complaining about wokeness and all that kind of stuff, and there was this comment about kind of right-wing terminology and stuff like this, and this is, in my opinion, not what it's meant to be. I'm not coming from a right-wing perspective or so, and you're often everything that you're saying is being strawmanned most of the time when it comes to those kind of political statements or things that are being taken out of context, and especially when you are someone who's very high up. And I just know about it because I read something about it yesterday. There was this one fitness influencer female who on a live stream just said something about transgender people, and she was ripped apart. And it wasn't, when I saw this, right, I don't even think that it was a big deal. And she was torn apart. And I thought, like, man, how sensitive people have gotten about those kind of topics and stuff like this, right? But to bring it back, I still do believe that many, especially like adolescent females and in their teens and stuff, I don't really think that it's easy, to be honest. Especially when you are that is also a generalization, but a pretty female. I think it can be quite tough because you're stigmatized as well quite easily. And I know this because Katie has gone through it as well. She was this big, blonde, attractive female, and she was always being kind of scrutinized for that. It wasn't easy for her. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird. You don't really necessarily always think about other people's perspectives, because I think, like, I when you tell me that about Katie, it makes sense. I can totally see it. But at the same time, I'm thinking, like, in my, like, don't know, like, shy, like, bullied, like little skinny kid like shoes who couldn't talk to girls, and I'm like, oh, those girls have it so easy or something. But it's like everyone has an element of like, I don't know, discrimination against them. It's just at varying levels.
And I can already hear the people saying like, man, she's beautiful. What problems did she have and stuff like this? Yeah, of course. Once again, it's something that we've discussed a couple of times already. There are always people with other problems that may seem more severe to then certain individuals than maybe the girl who was growing up in a very caring environment, lots of money, very secure environment, and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really appear that that person should have issues, right? But of course, she or he, that individual is going through different kind of issues.
Yeah.
And who are we to say that that issue is less severe to that individual than other issues?
Yeah, this is like, I like that this has been opened up a little bit and it hasn't become so just like dichotomous, where people are actually being a bit more open-minded to the discussions, but there is no like right answer. It's just actually being open-minded to different perspectives. Because I guess, like you said, like men, in my head, and I actually don't know the answer to this, men on average have it easier than women in the world. And especially like in the past, like you think, like you see some of the things that women had to go through in the workplace and everything. And then people bring up kind of the cases of like, well, most people like who went to war were men and they put their lives on the line and they died. And it's like, women didn't do that. And I don't know, it's just I don't think it's one of those like discussions where there is like a black and white answer. It's just like understanding every perspective, where every person is. I think of myself as like, I had a privileged background, so I'm not someone who would ever complain like, oh, I had it so hard or whatever. It's like, well, my parents earned quite a bit of money. Like I had a nice, like I went to a good school. I managed to go to university. I paid off my debt. Like I had no like battles to get through like maybe you did. And so I have to like appreciate that. But doesn't mean it was just like a piece of cake. Like I said, I was bullied at school, and that's like kind of uncontrollable in some ways. Anyway, it's an interesting discussion.
Yeah. But on that point, and then we can actually move on to something else. In Germany, there's a discussion already since a long, long time about a ratio, a female ratio in higher positions of certain companies, and also in political or in political spots, so that there is a balanced ratio. But in itself, I think it's discriminating already, right? Because if you are requiring that a minimum amount of a certain gender or a certain culture or something like this is filling that spot, it doesn't really go to the best position most of the time. And I don't think that this is the best solution about it. The best solution would be an anonymous maybe process where then you only have the qualifications for a certain position, independent of age, of gender, of race, and all that kind of stuff, right? I think it's a better approach than requesting kind of a minimum amount of a certain race or gender. Yeah, because that doesn't really solve the problem, isn't it?
It doesn't make the world better.
No, and it's kind of also ironic because it kind of tries to battle or combat the problem with the underlying problem. Fighting discrimination with discrimination, basically.
Yeah, and I get, well, you can use the example of like more males are doing more risky jobs and careers. It probably makes sense that they do, because they're on average stronger and more resilient, and like, so they're better in being police officers, for example, where they can manhandle someone and solve a situation because they're on average stronger than a female. So it's like they're risking their lives, putting them in that, like you wouldn't want to make it 50-50 police force, male and female, because that's not the best overall solution for the country's safety.
I can already hear the people shouting, screaming like, how dare you say something like this? But
equally,
just from a statistical perspective, that is reality and truth, right?
And I would say equally, females are generally more empathetic, more caring, more understanding. So like being a nurse, on average, a female is going to be more suited to that. Or a midwife, like that's very specific as well to being a female. They're more suited to that on average. I'm not saying there can't be male nurses. Absolutely, there can be. But it would be silly to say again, like, okay, let's shift everything around and make everything 50-50. It's like, that's too extreme.
Yeah, and that's why certain people are drawn towards certain jobs more so than others. You know, those who are very highly empathetic are probably more so drawn to those social jobs rather than those who are very much, I don't know, very analytical and all that kind of stuff. Those are the ones who, most of the time, being drawn to some mathematical jobs. And often those are, when it comes to also career goals, most men are more so career driven and oriented rather than females. And this is just from a statistical perspective.
And it makes sense biologically in some ways. And you could argue some of that's forced upon females in some ways. It's like, I don't know. Then you get into like some tricky discussions. And
but anyway, I just think that fighting fire with fire doesn't really work. And it should be more like an anonymous process to then give out the jobs, basically, or the positions. I think it would be a better suited way of doing things. But I can also then see the counter argument of like that there may then not be a certain demographic being represented in decision making, for example. And by that, the decision making process is then mostly biased because we are all biased, aren't we?
Yeah. It makes it hard to find this is, in a very strange way. I'm assuming you haven't watched it, but you might have. The Mole on Netflix.
No, I've heard about it, to be honest.
It's a super frustrating program because The Mole is like basically people are trying to work out who the mole is to stay in, but the mole has nothing to lose. They can like fuck you over or they can compliment things to make it seem like they're not the mole. And as a viewer, you don't know who the mole is. Yeah. So you're just watching this and you're like, it is so dissatisfying not knowing what the fuck is going on because you're like, the mole has nothing to lose. So how am I meant to decide this? So it's kind of like you said, it's like it's hard to find like a win-win perfect situation. I guess that's the fallacy of perfection in its own way there. So yeah, it reminds me of that because we're watching at the moment. I'm like, man, this program's so frustrating. I have no idea what's going on.
Let's move over then to training and nutrition. So Steve, there was a question actually on the last Improvement Season podcast in the comment section about those one-arm pull-downs. And I don't really know what exactly was asked, but I think it was like, how does it feel for you or something like this. Can you talk a little bit about it, what your experiences was with this kind of movement?
Yeah, before saying that, I just want to say something that I'm actually quite passionate about that's become like, I think it's almost stupid that I have to say it so much that it feels like people have forgotten how to just like try things. It's like everyone's looking for this perfect textbook answer and it's like, see how it goes. It's like, I don't know, you can do it for nutrition. Oh, how much pre-workout carbohydrate should I be having? It's like, well, how's it going with how you've currently got it? If it's going really well, well, you could try something else or you could just stick to what you're doing. It's like, oh, okay, I'll try something else. If it went better, cool. Like go with that. If it went worse, don't. It's like people are scared to experiment. There's no perfect answer. And that goes to like, again, exercises, especially in this current like day and age where biomechanics has become very powerful. And then you have the camps of like optimal versus versus like old school type of deal. And I think people are kind of like, just wanting to argue versus actually realizing like what's the principle behind what's going on here. Oh, you have to generate tension on a muscle across its range of motion and enough volume. And it's like, cool. So anyway, so basically my answer to a lot of people who are like, oh, how does it like, I'm just like, well, you see how it feels to you. If you don't think it looks great, cool. You don't have to try it. If you think it looks cool, give it a go, see how you like it. Like, I think people are just a bit afraid to experiment and they want to like have optimum perfect, or maybe they're set in their ways and they're like, no, I'm just going to do standard pull downs all the time. Anyway, so the way I got to this movement.
Yeah, wait a second, Steve, because it's funny that you're bringing that up again, because I think that we've talked about it maybe 10 or 20 episodes ago, where we've then talked
probably
about
10 or 20 times.
where we've then talked about listening to your body and what your body is telling you. And that is basically the same thing, isn't it? Of like, so how does it feel for you? Does that exercise feel good to you? Then go ahead and do that. Same goes for nutrition, right? If a certain way of eating makes you feel bloated and giving you digestive issues, but for someone else, it's the shit and the best way of eating, do you still insist of eating that way and just trying your very best for as long as possible until you're not experiencing any kind of digestive issues? Or are you then trying something else? Right? And I think it's so important. And I think it has gotten more present for, or kind of a little bit more clear to us over the years, probably, that this is the way to go. It's not about kind of a textbook way of doing things, or there's not the recipe of how to cook a specific cake for you specifically, right? You need to figure it out for yourself. You have all of the ingredients in front of you, and then you try to mix and blend, and then you put it into the oven, baking it, tasting it, and if you still think that you can improve it, try it next time, and try it next time. And there will be times where it will taste awful, and then there will be times where it's already kind of pretty much there, but you still have room to improve as well. So just wanted to chime in on this one.
The food analogies work so well because it's the same with food in general. Like you think about spice, there's probably a certain level of spice that most people like. For some people, it's going to be way too hot. For other people, it's going to be nowhere near hot enough. It's going to work for a lot of people. You can only discover by like trying it and then changing your spice. And like with this movement, so the way I came about it was I saw Kasim doing kind of like a turned away, I guess, pull around single arm lat pull down, where he was kind of coming across his body. I was like, it makes sense. You turn your body away, you get a bit more of a stretch on the lat. When I put myself in this position, I do get a good stretch. So I was like, for me, my frontal relax is super weak. I really need to bring up these like lats. So I want lat specific movement. So I want like extra isolation on those. So I went into it and I went to do it like he was doing it. And I was like, man, it just feels like I normally do. Let my kind of scapula kind of elevate and not keep like depressed. And I guess it would also protract a little bit as well. And just let my arm come up. And I was like, man, I get a really good stretch. And then as I was doing it, I was like, if I push myself in against this, I get an even better stretch. And I was just like, wow, I got some sort of like burn in my lats on the side that I've never had before. So that's kind of how I came to it. I kind of was doing it Kasim's way and then was like, let's put like, again, experiment with myself. If it feels a bit better this way. So that's how I kind of came to it. And yeah, I feel like I have not had lat soreness for, I don't know, fucking like a decade. And I got it for the first time. And obviously it was novel. I'm stretching an area probably that I haven't stretched it that way before. It hasn't been as sore since the first time where I really emphasized it. But I am getting more disruption, a little bit more pump sensation within that area. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. And it's interesting to see because I wanted to I've been talking to Kasim, not much more, but a little bit more to just get his perspective on things. I feel like since he's been posting more, he's kind of come to a bit more of a middle ground with the way that he represents his ideas. And I would say they're more representative of what he truly means versus being a little bit more, I would say maybe extreme and a bit black and white with like crosses, no lats versus tick lats. He hasn't gone that way, and it's really allowing me to digest his content more and try and learn from him more. So anyway, I wanted to know what he thinks, because I truly think Kasim is like very clued up in this area. Like I think he is, in terms of people who know biomechanics really well. I do think he is the person who I think he knows his shit. Like he really does. When I hear him talk about it, present it, he just seems to know what he's talking about. And like that I hope he doesn't take that as rude. Like I respect him and he's earned that respect from me. I don't respect everyone who talks about it. So anyway, I tagged him and I asked him about it. And funny enough, he was like, yeah, they've been in the works with a few different like experimentations in the lab that they've got in their gym. And that's one of the movements that they've kind of I have been tweaking and liking. So it's just funny to see like my self-experimentation led me to a movement that they have been thinking about and using based off, I guess, biomechanical models in some way. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I've seen a few people doing this kind of movement where they're turning into, I think I saw Brian Bornstein doing it and I was like, oh, interesting. Like other people maybe have experimented with it and found that they're getting a bit more of a stretch in this area. So yeah, anyway, that was a bit of a ramble.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the insights and also appreciate kind of the disclaimer as well about it being a novel stimulus, haven't gone through this type of range of motion basically maybe forever or ever. Yeah. because of that, it could very well be that it's just due to that the metabolic disruption happened and occurred. It's something that we are always experiencing when we are throwing in something like Bulgarian split squats, for example. It's not that you haven't trained the quads ever. Your quads are probably still growing tremendously from other exercises, but when you throw it in, one set is often enough to cause a massive disruption. And maybe it will turn out to be a productive exercise for you, maybe not. Time will tell, right?
Yeah, and one other thing someone said, how's it different to like two arms? And I do think there is something, not special, but there's something to training your lats single arm because you can use your torso to kind of like allow you to get a bit more around, which obviously you know that from like doing single arm rows or whatever. Like you can get leverage yourself in a way, whereas you couldn't do that with both arms because you would be like awkward off the thing. Or if I was trying to do it here, I couldn't stretch one side, stretch the other side. So yeah, anyway, you're completely right. It is definitely novel. I'm not like screaming and shouting that everyone has to be doing this like amazing lat movement. It's just like, oh, this was a cool experiment that seemed to be like efficacious for me, and maybe other people will find it interesting and useful to try.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And once again, to go back to what it is that you said in the beginning, with experimenting, I think that you have nothing to lose really, because you're still probably doing something overloading. You're still doing something hard, especially the more experienced you are, the easier it is to try new movements while still getting a good stimulus in. It's not that you're being thrown back to ground zero and you have to work your way up there. And I think that then it goes a long way of experimenting and figuring things out for yourself. And once again, you have nothing really to lose. And sometimes people are then like, yeah, but I don't want to waste time. Yeah, but what if the contrary? What if you're wasting time with what it is that you're doing now and not experimenting?
Yeah. No, you're completely right. Like I've definitely, to go back to the example of like being scared to experiment and like too much focusing on, I don't know, the general like advice and the textbook data or whatever, or like a PubMed study. I've definitely been there. And that's where like I was doing twice a day training because I was just like, yeah, I should be doing this because on paper it's better. Or I was doing way more volume than I am now. And it's like, oh, I should be doing this because like on paper it's better. It's like, yeah, but how is it actually happening in true time? Like how are you feeling about it in real time? And I think those short-term kind of proxies of pump disruption can be really helpful to guide decisions in the short term, and then in the like medium term, looking at progressions and things like that. So yeah. How
is nutrition going for you now? After the minicut, have things settled now? Is it still better? Are you already getting to the upper limit again? Because I do remember the last time you've been quickly getting to the point after the resensitization process where then you're getting, I don't know, fed up. Sorry for the pun.
That's a great pun. So yeah, like I said, I was like pretty ravenous after, and like my appetite has been very, very good. And it has, the only time I felt a little bit like, oh, I could do with not eating this was literally just before we got on live now. But I think that was just a case of me trying to get cereal down relatively quickly after having just trained. Normally I let myself set a little bit more. It just didn't have the time. So my appetite's actually very, very good. Cool. Like I said, my rate of gain was a little fast at the start, and I was a little lost because when I finished the diet, we immediately went to Tenerife, and then I was like kind of guesstimating food a lot. So I had no scale weight data. So I was like, you have this like week or two to ignore when you transition into a new phase. And so I guess I didn't need that data, but sometimes I like having it to kind of give me a gauge where I'm at. And so I was gaining a bit fast at the start on 3,700 calories. And I was thinking 3.7 to 3.8 would be a good place to start based off my rate of loss and based off my previous mass. You're about to be like...
These are beautiful numbers.
Yeah. So based off that, I thought that would make sense. And I think if I had been coaching myself, I would have been like, stay true to that, like keep going. Whereas I pulled back a little bit because it looked like my rate of gain was a bit fast, which it was on paper, but in reality, it was just like glycogen stores, more food weight, that sort of thing.
Can I ask what number it was, kind of the rate of gain in percentage terms?
Yes.
Do you know that from the top of your head?
No, but I have my spreadsheet open and I can get to it if you give me one moment.
Because I think it's interesting to hear what a fast rate of gain would be for you specifically.
Yeah.
Because we're always throwing around with kind of average terms and average readings, but what does it look like for you? What would you deem for you is too fast?
So when my weigh-in before I went to Tenerife was 184.4. That was the lowest weigh-in I got the whole time, actually. Oh no, I hit some 184s the week before. So my average was like just below 185 pounds, went to Tenerife, missed 5 weigh-ins, and then came back at 185.4, and then the average for that week ended up being 185.8, so I gained a pound basically like week on week, based off the numbers that I had available, which was a 0.6 rate of gain increase, which for week 1 going into the mass, I thought was very, very reasonable.
Totally.
Now, I thought it would slow down this next week, but it didn't. I gained just over a pound, so it's again a 0.6 rate of gain, so just over 0.5%. And that for me is a little fast. Something I'm very, very conscious of now for me in particular is whilst I like the faster rate of gain, because if I don't aim for that, I tend to fall to the lower, post mini cut is not the time where I need to be at the faster rate of gain, because that's easy wins for me. My appetite is good, like training is good, I feel good. There's no point me chasing a faster rate of gain. So I was very conscious that if I gain a bit towards the faster end, I'm cutting time away long-term into my journey of massing, if that makes sense. So I pulled things back to 3,600 calories this past week, and I gained 0.5 pound. So it dropped right down. And interestingly enough, week on week, I gained 0.5 pound, but my averages, my weigh-ins through the days were basically very static. So it looked like I kind of stabilized a bit. And so far this week, I'm actually down in body weight. So I think I'm almost down like 0.5 pound so far into this week. So it looks like maybe now I've hit like, I don't know, glycogen fullness, and like I'm like all the mass bloat that I kind of quickly dropped has now come back on. And my maintenance before I went into the mini cut was like 3,700 calories. So it wouldn't surprise me now if 3,700 calories 3-4 weeks in was now back to near enough maintenance, and I need to push calories up. So this week I'm going back to like 3.7, 3.8 now. Actually, I literally said today I'll go to 3.8 and just like make sure it's moving back up in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a 1 minute break if you're now hungry after Steve talking about calories, rate of gain, and all that kind of stuff. You have 1 minute, and then we will back talking about rate of gains.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
So here we are back again. I think when it comes to this, Steve, it's very interesting that you've talked through it, because for people, if they are not coaches themselves, they are not dealing with other metrics and other data points from other people. They are probably not really getting that insight from so many other people. So they can't really make sense of maybe the scale weight fluctuations, whether it is all right to see the body weight coming down again after 4 weeks of a mini cut, for example. But before that, it was way, way faster than they wanted to in terms of the rate of gain. And also, I think it also demonstrates very nicely what a collection of data does to you. And it's kind of like a reinsurance for you, because you know in the past, 3,700 was your maintenance, was roughly around the same body weight, a little bit higher than this. So what's the likelihood now that you are in a massive surplus? Unless something has changed significantly in your life and your lifestyle over long term, then I don't really think anything is wrong here. And then it's maybe more likely that the data that you're collecting, there's something off in that reading in the initial short term. And trusting the process and trusting the data that you've collected over maybe weeks and months and maybe even years is probably more of a reliable tool rather than the initial scale weight readings.
Yeah. Yeah. And something else to add further, and I had the individual context of me, and the reason I mini cut is mostly like for appetite. So I didn't want to rush away by gaining at a slightly faster pace. I was like, I prefer to be at the slower end to milk out this as long as possible, because I find, again, when I hit a certain body weight, my appetite just tanks. And then the other thing was, on coming out of the mini cut, I did start having more meals out and takeaways, and I was like, there's an inherent inaccuracy in this. So I might think I'm eating around 700 calories, but I could be off by a couple of hundred easily on these days that I'm eating out, and maybe that's boosting my calories up a bit. So maybe just tighten up a little bit. And so that's kind of where I was coming from. And I certainly people looking from the outside in could say, Steve, you are maybe overthinking some of that. You probably didn't need to pull back. And I'd say, cool, yeah, absolutely. It was only 100 calories though, so I wasn't stressing it. It wasn't a stress for me. And I think I'm back in kind of the driving seat again with 3.8.
Yeah, and also this, once again, what is probably more important for someone like you, Steve, and just in general, is time in the game. And not just so much stressing about kind of that 1 week where you're pulling back or increasing calories or whatever, right? If you then pull back, so be it, right? It's kind of 1 week out of 10 years. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important, and I want to really put that message across so that people understand it more and more so, that time in the game is the biggest part of the game itself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. We spoke about it recently, and then I was reflecting on some old posts, and so many times we refer to it, actually. Like, it's crazy how often I mean, probably people listening, maybe they're not, it depends. Because you can recycle content and people aren't even aware that you've recycled it, because it's just like it just disappears. They may have never seen it before. So it is something we've harped on about a ton. So I hope people realize that is like a big point of ours at Revive Stronger, is like being honest. Like, it's just time being consistent, doing like not vaguely, pretty much the right things. You don't have to do ultra specific right things like each and every day. You just need to be like on point most of the time. So yeah, you're completely right. It's time.
Yeah. It's also going back to the analogy about water and vapor and vaporing when it is in the sun, and then making the analogy with muscle gain. Just needs to be there. You know that it's kind of vaporizing, and with enough time, it's at some point completely gone, the water, right? But you can't see it in the initial moment because it's happening so slowly. And I think that this is a perfect analogy when it comes to the process of physique transformation, basically.
Yeah, for sure. How is your training and nutrition going?
Right now, it's kind of a little bit all over the place. It's not all over the place. There's still structure and all that kind of stuff, but it feels like there are always kind of things that are being thrown in my way, and I'm like Super Mario, just jumping over it and trying my very best to not get killed and start the level from the beginning. Because I don't know what it is, but at home, everyone has been sick over the past couple of weeks, a couple of times. And that one time I was caught with that kind of virus as well, where I then puked. But there have been kind of one thing after another. And now, last week I had like this inflamed and sore throat. And now Hugo has something that is not related to that, has fever. And I don't know what it is. Each and every single week, there's someone at home who's sick, and I would really try to keep my distance then because I'm just getting too annoyed being constantly sick as well. And then, of course, at home, lots of external things happen. I've talked about the kitchen. We need a new car, so I'm on it to get to purchase a new car as well. But especially the kitchen was a big deal, and it was finished yesterday, finally. And the irony was that I first realized now how long of a process it was and how stressful it actually was, because such a relief was actually starting to take place yesterday evening. And I felt so much more relaxed when I was then ending the day on the couch. I, for the first time in a long time, felt, I don't know, more stress-free, not completely stress-free, but more stress-free, because the entire kitchen was in our living room, and I hate it, Steve. I'm just too much of a control freak and too much of a clean person when it comes to things around, that it needs to be kind of clean and needs to be in order. That's just a tick of mine. And everything was just like spread across our living room. You couldn't really use the kitchen, and that was going on for an entire month. Only the last week we couldn't use anything out of the kitchen because we needed to actually remove everything. So for an entire month, we were kind of living halfway in the living room with the kitchen. So I had my coffee set up in the living room, and it was just a mess. And it was constantly haunting you as a stressor. This, and then conjunction with everyone around you is sick and all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit a couple of more things. And then also my hip is still giving me a little bit of issues as well. So couple of challenges, but that doesn't mean I don't get the job done. I'm still going in there, still hitting some good numbers in the gym, getting some good productive sessions in. It's just a little bit more of a challenge, but I always like to say to my athletes as well, and I would be quite a hypocrite if I wouldn't really do it myself then, because I always say, like, during the hard times, you're being tested of whether you really want this or not. It's not about the easy times. The easy times are easy. It's what the name implies already. But when the hard times come, then you're being tested of whether you really want this or not, whether this has a high priority or not. And for me, I'm still getting it done. There's no other way around it. I need this. It's kind of like a medicine, you know. If I don't take this, I will definitely feel more awful, even though that the medication sometimes may come with side effects as well.
Yeah, I know that exact. And it's a great way of putting it, actually. It's like when the going gets tough, like the tough gets going. Is that the saying? Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so I think it's actually a song or part of a song, like a lyric from a song. But that makes complete sense to me. I'm always internally disappointed when I see a client and it's like, if there's a small thing that comes up, I would say, like, obviously that's somewhat subjective, whether or not it's a small stressor or not. But when I look at what's happened and I'm like, there was definitely a way around that. I'm always internally a bit disappointed for them or because of that. But then it's a case of like, I'm very honest with them. I'm like, is there anything in that situation you could have done better? Yeah. Because if you did everything you could, like you did everything you could. But if you honestly thought, like again, in your situation with the kitchen, if you were just like, so I just had takeaways all week. So is that honestly all you could do? Or is there quite a lot more you had in your control? And quite clearly there was. Or it's like I'm on holiday and I can't get my protein in. It's like, okay, is that honestly your best effort to have got your protein in? Or did you maybe just not care enough? Like, you know, it wasn't a priority for you.
Absolutely. And I think if you treat everything in life this way, I don't really think that you will accomplish anything that you set for yourself as a goal. As harsh as it sounds, I know that not everyone is treating fitness the way that they are treating other things, but I'm just generalizing now. If that's your general mantra when approaching a new target or a new commitment, there won't be anything that you will accomplish. And then by the end of your lifetime, you will look back and be like, man, what did I even do? I started all the time things and never really pushed through or went through with it. Never. And there are plenty of things that I've started in the past. Like, I don't know whether it was just interests, hobbies, stuff like this. There's always a honeymoon phase, the first period where you're making rapid progress. And then after a while, you really need to put in the hard work and effort. And sometimes when you're getting to that point, this isn't for me. That's why I'm not going to commit further time for that. Or you really do like it, but you're just too lazy, or I don't know. It's more like you're justifying not really putting in the work and effort and hoping still to get the results that we would like to, which of course never is going to happen. And there are plenty of times where I now look back and regret that I didn't even do the bare minimum Because as we've talked about, over time is probably the biggest reason why people are getting good at something. And if I just did the bare minimum in order to progress, so the minimum effective volume basically for something, then there would be plenty of things where I could now say like, man, I'm now pretty good at it. So for example, music. I fell a little bit out of love in playing music. That's for sure. And I stopped playing music back in 2013. It was kind of the last time that I played the bass instrument. If I kept going, just playing the minimum effective volume, 10 years have passed since then. Just imagine how good I would be now after 10 additional years of playing, just the minimum effective volume. Right? And there are plenty of things like this. And plenty of things where I do regret that I didn't stick with it. And this is something that can be taken as a lesson for the vast majority of people, because there will always be times. There's always going to be a holiday, a time of sickness, a time of despair, frustration, challenges, stressors. Acknowledging that will hopefully help you sticking with those things, because if you make it through the hard times, then you will flourish in the good times.
Yeah,
that can be applied to everything in life.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any examples where I've put myself into something and then like pulled out. But I think that's not because I'm great and I've stuck with everything. It's because I've not really given that many things a go, and I've kind of gone head first into like bodybuilding and put everything into that. But I think the great thing is, I think once you do get through some of those tough times, like you're getting through this and it's like a tough time. But if like when I say that to you, like, is now really that tough for you to hit your like macros and get your training in? You'd be like, not really. I mean, it's a bit tougher than normal, but it's going to be done.
I think you bring up a good point, Steve. I think sometimes you need another person to call you out on your bullshit. This is why I very much like David Goggins, and I just listened to the second book of his. And this is just me. David Goggins, the way that he's at least talking and the things that he's talking or writing about deeply resonates with the person that I am. Like, suck things up, don't complain, you little bitch, and all that kind of stuff, you know, it just deeply resonates with me. And I know that sometimes it isn't appropriate, and I know that sometimes it isn't the feasible approach for certain individuals and all that kind of stuff, but that's what I'm saying, it just deeply resonates with me, the way that I'm thinking and look at life as well. And I think he's also then talking about some kind of sergeant or so, that was always calling him out on his bullshit and also pushing him. And it helped him tremendously in achieving his goals. Because he then realized like he was taking on a suit, a mask, a character that he actually wasn't. It was kind of, he differentiated between David and Goggins. Goggins was the hardcore motherfucker who was just getting shit done. And David was just the pathetic little guy who just wants to have it comfortably sitting at home on the couch. And he was always like, get your shit together, Goggins. Come on, let's do this now. Yeah, and it tremendously helped him, right? Having people around him call him out when he was, in his own opinion, a pussy. And I think that sometimes you need that. You need that because it's so easy for you to convince yourself that, it's so cold outside and this isn't the right time to do X, Y, Z, when someone else is presenting it in front of you, what it is that you're complaining about. Most of the time you would also then be like, man, right now, I'm actually pathetic.
Yeah.
This sounds awful. Right? And then it may be easier to actually get your ass up and do something.
I think I'd enjoy that book. And I think the people that would enjoy the book probably the most probably don't get the most from it, because you're probably already quite like that person, I imagine.
Yeah.
And I feel like I wish I have some people in my life who I would like to read that book, but they'd probably hate it.
Funny enough, Steve, I was talking about it to Katie the other day and said like, man, this book is pure confirmation bias for me.
Yeah.
This is something that I do like because it just is my worldview. However, I also absolutely understand that there are people out there, and I think that Katie is also one of those people who would listen to that book and be like, man, what is wrong with that guy? He's just dog shit crazy, way too extreme, way too hard on other people as well, and all that kind of stuff. So yes, definitely. It confirms my worldview, and that's not always the best thing.
Yeah. I think because a situation comes to mind where, you know, you're having work done on your kitchen, and I was reporting back to you that I was frustrated because I want more work done on our house. And so for the past few weekends, I've been drilling into Charlotte, like, what's the next thing we're doing? And like, all right, what's the priority? We're doing the spare bedroom. What has to come first? And so we're working through it. And I was like, okay, so the first thing that has to happen is we need to deconstruct that bed. And I was like, I really don't want to do that. And I said to Charlotte, I'm like, my reward for doing the bed will be to sit with you this evening and watch TV. And she's like, Steve, you're so ridiculous, like laughing at me. And I'm like, no, I got to do this. So I went upstairs. I was like, fucking hate this. But I like unscrewed the bed, did it all. And I was like, man, I've done my job. I did my bit this weekend. Now I can relax a little bit. And I imagine that's like a similar mindset that I get so much satisfaction from doing things I don't want to do, because it's like, wow, I did it. I didn't want to do that, but fucking did it. No part of me enjoyed doing the process, but like once it's done, it's like, oh wow, like I'm proud of myself for doing that. And like setting challenges like that, like I get this reward if I do this. I don't know, I feel like that's a David Goggins kind of mindset a little bit, and probably I don't know if you can relate to that.
No, absolutely. But I'm at a point where I don't even question those things anymore. If something needs to get done, I'm the man who gets it done. I'm not complaining about it. And there was definitely a time where I was a lazy bastard, like a very lazy bastard. And I don't know what changed, to be honest. I would very much attest it to becoming self-employed. But this is just a hinge that I have. I don't really know and can't prove that this was the reason and this was the moment where just things changed for me. But this is the time when you have to learn and to acknowledge that no one is going to do the job for you. And if you're not doing the work, nothing will happen.
Yeah.
And then if you do this on a consistent basis, years over year, then at some point you will get accustomed to that, and it's becoming part of your identity. It's becoming a habit to get work done without someone needing to instruct you in doing that and waiting for, I don't know, a confirmation from someone else or needing the order from someone else. Yeah. You just get work done. And I think really that self-employment was the reason. To be fair though, this is also sometimes not a good trait to have, because I can't sit still, and it causes, of course, sometimes a lot of stress, anxiety, and also in my environment, it causes stress and anxiety as well, because I'm the guy who always needs to do something, and whenever I'm not doing anything at all, I can't really calm down, and I'm kind of moody, and I don't know, not a nice person to be around. And that's also not nice, right? So I would sometimes love to have like a switch where I'm just like on and off, and so I'm also working on myself when it comes to this.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. I think that's why probably the gym helps. Like if I can do a bit of work and have the gym, and like I do that, because I generally don't do like formal work on Saturdays. I will still cover some emails and like some bits and pieces, post on socials. But Sunday I don't train, but then I'll use the time I don't train to get ahead of the working week, because I'm like, I have to do something productive.
Yeah, I started that as well.
I'm like, right, I've taken Ada for a walk. I've done like 4 client check-ins. I've gone to the supermarket, done my weekly shop, and I'll start to like ticking things off. So I'm exactly the same as you. And like I struggle when me and Charlotte, like when she's just like, she's been commuting and like working and in London and stuff, but I'm like, I want to get out. I want to do something. I don't care what it is. I just want to be moving, doing something, and I don't want to just sit on the couch. And yeah, it can be hard sometimes to relax. Like a beach holiday sounds like a nightmare to me, for example. It just doesn't sound fun.
No,
I can't do
absolutely.
that.
And this is why, once again, to bring it all the way back to what you said there, was it or is it really challenging at the moment? No, not really.
Yeah.
Right. In comparison to other times and other situations, no, it isn't, because it's mostly self-induced, especially. And that's why I don't have any right to complain. Or at least if I complain, that do it intentionally, knowing that it is just to let off some steam.
Yeah.
And not to really complain about your situation or so.
And I partly brought that up because for the listeners who maybe do struggle with those situations, every time you push through the times that are harder, it gets easier.
Yeah.
Like every time.
And it's so much more rewarding, in my opinion. If you make it through, you're really like, well, when was it the most, how do you feel when you've accomplished something that took years? Probably freaking amazing. The entire journey was so much worth it then. And often the journey is the most rewarding part.
Yeah.
But if something didn't really take a long time or wasn't really that hard, you will forget about that accomplishment as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can even see that in some, like, more so potentially like bodybuilders and stuff, where they were rewarded a lot without much effort. And so when they do compete and they win or what have you, they don't get that much satisfaction from it. And so it doesn't actually ultimately become worth it for them to go through the slight hardship that it is. Whereas like you get some crazies like us where we've like don't maybe get rewarded so well, but when we do, because we put in so much work for it, it feels so much more satisfying. And so we just crave that.
And I think that your example is good because many people can relate to that. But if you take it one step further, some people, they work their entire life on a certain hypothesis that they had, or theory that they had, and they're working in a scientific field. And after maybe decades, they are capable of maybe finding the solution or the results and all that kind of stuff. How freaking rewarding must that be? If you had like one purpose in life, that was your kind of the thing that you needed to accomplish before you're dying, and then you actually make it happen before you're passing away. I think this is probably one of the most gratifying feelings that you can have. If like after 40, 50 years of researching, you were actually then being rewarded. How crazy must that be?
Yeah. I have a bit of a weird perspective with that as it relates to bodybuilding in particular, where I just kind of have this, and some people, this would be crazy to them, and I can understand that, where I'm just like, I'm kind of happy knowing I gave it my all, and just, I'm not too worried about where I land. It's as long as I gave my best efforts, as long as I did my all, like I just derive so much like reward from that aspect. And I think that's probably why the shonen anime are really like great for us, because we relate to that person who maybe doesn't have it all, but just always gives it everything. And
I don't even know that I would put myself in that category.
Oh, do you not?
Though.
Okay.
No. If I'm completely honest with myself, have I given it my all? Probably not. Right? Because for that, I would have needed to go down a different path, I think. And that is like, not really, I don't know, getting a family and all that kind of stuff, you know. And yeah, don't know. Maybe.
That's context though, right? So
yeah,
you couldn't give it more than, or I guess it's an honest question for you to ask yourself. Could I give it more than I am in my current situation? And then you can assess that. And if you're, I mean, props to you if you're honest that you could. But
I probably could invest more time. But the question then in that context is also, would it be worth it?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think in your context, it makes sense that it maybe isn't. And if I had kids and more going on that I derived a lot of value from, and I think if I had children, I would. Yeah. Then the extra effort that I put in for those goals probably isn't worth it. So that's probably why I can have that quite blinkered mindset. But I just know for myself that I'm not going to look back and be like, oh, you wasted so much time doing this thing, because I'm just like, yeah, but I enjoyed it. And I'm really proud of myself for giving it so much time and effort. And like, yeah, you didn't, achieve winning a kind of a WNBF pro like card, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but this piece of paper doesn't really mean that much. Like, yeah, I don't know.
No, absolutely. I wanted to talk about one more thing, but we don't really have time for this, Steve. Because I was at that Asian restaurant place, and I had a fantastic meal that was so clean. I think it was the cleanest meal that I've ever had, honestly. And I took a picture of it, and you can see it over on Instagram. Like, honestly, there was no drip of oil on it. And
did you have to request it, or was it on the menu as is?
No, I needed to request, of course, to have this sauce separately, and they did it, and it was amazing because that bowl, it was a peanut butter kind of cream sauce, and that bowl was easily as much calorically dense as the meal itself.
Yeah.
And it's something that I want to touch on, but I don't think that we have time for it this time, so we save it for the next time. Save it for the next time, because I found it just so interesting how many calories you can save if you do something like this.
Yeah.
And how, in quotation marks, clean you can still eat, and how well it is that you then can also estimate the food in front of you, because they had like a small bowl, small handful of rice, vegetables over the plate, and then a small portion of chicken breast. And because you can really see that there was no oil over it, it was just the cleanest shit ever, and you could very well estimate things. And that bowl alone was, once again, half or double the amount then of the total. So it would have made up half of the amount of calories for the total amount of meal. But let's save it for the next time then.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. Nice. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. I don't have anything to particularly sell you on right now, so just follow Pascal_Floor on Instagram, and you can check out that post, because that's going to help you for next time when we start talking about it.
Exactly.
And thank you as always for tuning in.
The cleanest meal that was ever served to me.
It was very clean.
It was very clean.
We'll talk about it next time. I've had similar levels of clean.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, we'll talk about it next time.
If you had wrapped it in kind of a piece of paper, so the piece of paper would have still been dry. That's how clean it was. So I leave it here. Guys, until next time. Cheers.
Take care.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality, and we know how to do it, and we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.